This chart here implies that it's very likely that the altcoins are going to fall yet another 40% in the next weeks. Now that's not in US dollars, that's measured as the altcoin dominance. How much of all of crypto is currently in the alts? To be more precise, this looks at the others market cap, so that's the altcoins that are not in the top 10 relative to the entire market cap excluding stablecoins. Over the last 5 years, we tended to trade in a very constant downward trend. We are at the upper end of that trend, and so an accelerated decline of the altcoins is very likely. And I know what you're thinking. The altcoins have already crashed in the last year, pretty much all of them. Doesn't it make sense at some point to be contrarian, to buy when nobody wants to buy? Well, I do think there is an opportunity here, but it's not the obvious one. Hi, my name is Gerhard. I've been in the crypto space for the last 8 years. I hit my first million 3 years ago, and I did this mainly through active trading of altcoins. My track record is in the link down below. In the last 2 years, I started to publish my trades in real time. We achieved 47% per annum quite consistently. We are currently at an all-time high, and we did that while the vast majority of people in the crypto space just lost their money. You might have even seen many YouTubers have completely stopped publishing, but we are still making money. All of the closed trades, they are available on the website down below. The open trades are of course only available to the premium members. So again, this is all the smaller altcoins relative to all of crypto. So the altcoin dominance. Now, what kind of altcoins are going to fall though? Check this out. This is a slightly adjusted chart. This looks at all of altcoins relative to the smaller altcoins. So total 3ES, that's what we can see here in the background. That's the cryptocurrency market cap, excluding Bitcoin, excluding Ethereum, and also excluding the stablecoins. So we've got the entire altcoin market relative to just the smaller altcoins, everything except the top 10. This looks at how well are the bigger altcoins doing within the altcoin market. And this points towards something very interesting. We tend to trade in a range in the last 6 years, and the bigger altcoins might underperform the average altcoin by another 24%. So the altcoins already look weak. The bigger altcoins look even weaker. And with bigger, we simply mean the top 10. Let's have a look at those top 10. Starting off with BNB. We have to, of course, exclude Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Tether. Here is BNB's dominance. Now, you might have heard of a concept called Bitcoin dominance. So that measures all of crypto and how big is Bitcoin's market cap compared to the entire market cap of the space. Now we can apply the same concept to other cryptocurrencies. We can look at BNB's dominance. We can look at XRP's dominance. We can look at Dogecoin's dominance. How much of all of crypto is in a particular altcoin? This measure is useful because it gives us an idea how much a particular altcoin might be outperforming or underperforming at a particular point in time. And very often, besides just the general expansion and contraction of the entire space, we also see capital rotation within the space. As in, on day one, we might have all attention on asset A, and then on day two, we've got all attention on asset B. And so the capital just rotates between the two, which generates relatively predictable trading ranges. Now, predictable is here in air quotes because in the end, nobody knows the future. We are just playing with probabilities. But check this out. I connected those two tops for BNB, or to be more specific, the BNB dominance. And interestingly enough, the bottoms here tend to also align quite well with that. That implies that the current risk for an underperformance of BNB is very high compared to its potential reward if you were to buy BNB over other cryptocurrencies. So it's always a game of opportunity costs. We're not trying to decide here, should we buy BNB or should we be in cash? We are deciding if we have already a crypto allocation anyways, where should we allocate that towards within the crypto ecospace? That's what we are answering with dominance charts. And BNB is probably not the best allocation, at least if this pattern was to stay intact. Now here is XRP's dominance. Again, over the last 5 to 6 years, there tend to be quite stable trading ranges. I don't think it's a coincidence that those bottoms align well, that those tops align well. I think this is just the market moving risk on capital towards the asset when there's positive news, and then gradually moving it out of the asset as something else becomes the dominating story in crypto. And currently, XRP is losing momentum. Again, the risk is very high, a potential loss of 66%. At dominance levels close to 1.1%, as in when 1.1% of all of crypto is in XRP, then it seems to be cheap. But when it's closer to 5 or 4%, it's not that cheap anymore. Currently, by the way, it's at 3.2%. So we looked at BNB, we looked at XRP. What about Solana? Again, our overarching chart here implies that the larger altcoins are overvalued relative to the smaller altcoins. And also that the altcoin market in general is likely going to suffer. Here's a chart for Solana's dominance. Very long term, it actually tends to trend up. But over the last 2.5 years, there was no more outperformance. This run up here, that was when Memecoin trading through pump.fun accelerated on the chain. But that Memecoin trading has slowed down, and so the interest in Solana has slowed down as well. So Solana looks specifically weak because here the downtrend is accelerating. I wouldn't even be surprised if we fell below this support, as we did in the past. As in, we did have a relatively constant trend, but then FTX broke and then we fell even below the support. Now, all of this looks very bleak. It looks like we can't make any money in crypto, but actually we can make money with those relative valuations. We can bet on falling prices of one asset and at the same time on rising prices of another asset, thus playing the delta between the two assets. We completely cancel out the general expansion and contraction of the market. We are just looking at, will A outperform B or will B outperform A? And those kind of trades tend to be very profitable if they are managed well, if the risk management is in place. Again, this trading history in the last 2 years, it's mainly relative valuation trades. We are shorting pump relative to Solana in this case. So we bet on a falling price of pump and then on a rising price of Solana. And I tend to do this for pretty much every trade. I like to hedge the trade. I shorted Trump relative to Bitcoin. I shorted NIR relative to Bitcoin. Recently, I use Bitcoin mainly as a hedge, but that's a topic for another video. Here's the Luna Classic short. That was actually also versus Bitcoin. Again, not every single trade makes money this way, but on average, while everybody else got burnt, we achieved 47% per annum, right? It doesn't happen just out of pure luck. What about Tron though? Tron has been performing quite well in the last years. This here is Tron's dominance. And to be honest, I do not like this chart either. Yes, we could make the argument maybe there is a long-term bullish trend, but even with that argument, we are currently at the upper end of that trading range. I'm not so sure if it makes sense to now specifically get into Tron, especially given the macro backdrop. Now, what about Hyperliquid? Hyperliquid is the only cryptocurrency within the top 10 that I think is worth having idiosyncratic exposure to. Hyperliquid has an ETF that continues to see inflows pretty much every single day. Hyperliquid is a platform that continues to grow, both in its capital, but also in its trading fees. Feel free to check out the prior video on this channel about Hyperliquid. I personally use Hyperliquid every single day. This is also where our automatic copy trading is hosted. So we do a lot of those relative valuation trades, right? We bet on falling altcoins and then on a rising Bitcoin price right now. And those kind of trades, they can either be manually copy traded or it can be done automatically. And the automatic trading, it's hosted over here. Hyperliquid is the largest decentralized perpetual futures exchange. It's by far the leader in the space. It's taking away more and more market share from Binance and the other centralized exchanges. This here is not just a pump and dump. Hyperliquid is dominating the space. First via perpetual futures on cryptos and now via trading of traditional finance assets as well. As in, we can trade stocks, we can trade commodities, we can trade precious metals on Hyperliquid. I very much recommend you to look deeper into Hyperliquid in case you don't yet know much about the project. Again, feel free to check out the dedicated video on Hyperliquid that has recently been published on this channel. And so last but not least, let's have a look at Dogecoin. Here is Dogecoin's dominance. Again, the long-term trend is not great. Dogecoin over time tends to rather decline. It doesn't look as bad though as the other cryptocurrencies, as in the potential upside versus the downside might actually justify a contrarian bet. We don't necessarily have to hit the bottom here, right? We didn't hit it over here. And then subsequently, Dogecoin almost tripled. That's definitely possible as well. I'm personally not betting on it, but I wouldn't blame if you decided to do so, just as a little risk on allocation. Dogecoin looks fine, but BNB, XRP, Solana, Tron, I don't like any of those charts. Either the valuation is already very high or the momentum has already turned around with still a lot of potential sell pressure going forward. But yeah, trading by hedging the macro environment, so by playing one asset versus the other, has been very beneficial for me. All of those trades can be verified by clicking on the date over here. So we shorted Luna on the 12th of May. That's a Telegram message. All of those messages go out via email as well. This was after a massive rally, and then subsequently we closed that position after we got a golden cross. So this is also combined with some back tests, trying to figure out what are the best triggers for buying and selling. But that's a topic of another video. In general, I think it's best to always open two sides of a position, as in we want to be short one asset and long the other asset, because there's a lot of correlation within crypto, right? When Bitcoin goes up, many altcoins go up as well. When Bitcoin goes down, most altcoins go down as well. So really, if we want to bet on an altcoin specifically, we should do some hedging. Let me show you an example. This here is the Balancer token. This has a very high token inflation. That's why it tends to go down. But every now and then we do have some rallies. So betting on a falling price when Balancer temporarily can go up by 130%, for example, over here by 110%. It's not necessarily that great. But once we look at Balancer relative to Bitcoin, then suddenly the chart underperforms much more consistently. And now those rallies aren't that much of a problem anymore. The maximum here was 71%, but in general, it tends to go down in a much more straight line. And that's actually what we want to do. We are effectively doing the exact opposite trade. So we bet on a rising Bitcoin price in this example, and then on a falling Balancer price, and then we get this return over here. Now, using Balancer in this example is quite risky because the Balancer market cap is very low, and so there can be short squeezes. I currently don't have the Balancer position open, but for larger caps, the same mechanism still works. And so yeah, you can simply just follow my trades manually if you're interested in that. The membership is currently $125 per month. There's also a 1-week money back guarantee. In case you do not like premium, just email me over here. I'll refund you 100%. If you want to have the automatic copy trading, you don't want to trade manually, then that's available to the annual subscribers. But if you do have a bit of time and don't want to risk that much capital first, it's probably best to just start out weekly and then upgrade later. Generate your first profit, see with your own eyes how this works, and then you can commit more later on. If it's your first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish this regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. Helps the channel grow. See you next time. Cheers.